The problem is, it's going to be more than a month. So some folks like to get the assessment out of the way sooner because they'll forget. So maybe I'll get a show of hands on whoever's here right now. So if only answer if you're a credit student. Would you rather do the exam during Ramadan at a convenient time, of course, such that you don't have to wait until after Ramadan to get tested, which would be, again, at least 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks after our last class. So show of hands of who would prefer in Ramadan. 2. Who prefers to wait after Ramadan, potentially 5, 6 weeks after the last class? There's not only 2 credit students, guys.
Conflicting with the actual exam season?
No, it'll be like first week of April, inshallah, like after Eid. Exams start middle of April, right?
Yeah, you're good. You have like 12 days before.
Yeah. So it's still before. So hands up if you're a credit student during Ramadan. Hands up. Wait after our last class by about 5 weeks, because that takes us after Ramadan. Okay, so we'll have it during Ramadan. I will not have it during iftar time, inshallah, I promise, or Taraweeh. But it will have to be during the day. Okay. We won't do it too early. It'll be on a weekend, inshallah, and it'll likely be at wellness. Okay. Yes. We'll answer that later, inshallah. I'm just very short on time today, so we're going to try to end within an hour, inshallah. طيب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين الله أكبر لله الحمد اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا شقيا ولا محروما اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. So we have covered 3 surahs now in the 3rd cluster of Juz' Amma. I'm not going to recap the entire Juz' as we usually do because of time, and because I think by now it's straightforward. I will recap the last this term, so the 3rd cluster, and what we've covered so far in the 3rd cluster. In the 3rd cluster, that talks about tools that are revealed early on during the Meccan period to equip the Sahaba, and certainly to equip us in the journey of life. And these tools are what we said, divine tools. These are not things that you can arrive on your own to logically. It's not that to say they're not logical, it's not that these are kind of ethics and morals that are divinely taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You wouldn't know about them otherwise. And so Surah Al-Tariq, for example, the first surah in this cluster, talked about tawakkul, the concept of tawakkul, without explicitly mentioning the word tawakkul, because that word, obviously, during the time of the Arabs, when in early stages of Islam and before, didn't mean anything to people. So the lesson from Surah Al-Tariq is that if you live in dunya without tawakkul, you will have a depressing life. You will have a challenging life, and so to get around that, put your full trust in Allah and do your best. And then have the third component is have contentment, have rida with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides for you. And if you live that way, you will never be disappointed. You will never be stressed. You will never be upset. Because as long as I put my effort, that's what's in my control, and I then leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The result is in His hands subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then I have full confidence what's going to come as a result of my work and my putting my trust in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be the best outcome for me. Even if I don't see it, even if I don't think it, even if you don't think it, it's the best results. And so if you live that way, subhanAllah, you've ruled out so many mental health issues that people struggle with. So that was Surah Al-Tariq. So any questions about Surah Al-Tariq? Okay, so today we'll cover Surah Al-A'la. We'll cover also the review of Surah Al-A'la. I said 4, it's the word of the 3rd surah. I'm getting ahead of myself. Surah Al-A'la we covered last week. And Surah Al-A'la taught us about what? It's in front of you guys, right? I'm not going to throw curveballs at you. Tasbih. What is tasbih? Yes.
Subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect.
Yes, there's 4 elements to it, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfection, right? And that He is free from any indeficiencies or any flaws, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes?
Attribute everything to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing else is perfect. This leads you to make certain actions, and then Islam comes to you. Islam makes life easier for you.
Right. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfection first and foremost. And His capability and is far supreme over everybody else. There's no flaws or deficiencies in Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that any flaws or deficiencies are attributed to us. We are the ones that are weak. We are the ones that in need of Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if something happens, we don't blame it on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He's perfect. That's why you say subhanallah. You hear people when they encounter difficulty or just things that they don't know how to deal with, they say subhanallah. They're saying, oh Allah, you're perfect. This is not because of you, it's because of my shortcomings. And even if I don't understand what it is, it's my shortcoming. And so what naturally, if I understand that, will cause me to do is, as the sister mentioned, to try to be better, to improve, to look at where I went, where I could have gone wrong, what I can improve, and I move forward with that in my mind, right? And that I know and have full understanding and trust that Islam is actually, in the Islam is the ease that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eased me into. He gave me that ease to make my life easier. And so if I don't find ease in it, then I need to work on myself, because the problem isn't in Islam, it's in myself. But these are not meant to cause you, to crush you, to say, oh, and put you down and say, I'm always making mistakes. I'm always, no. These are ways for you to improve this mindset, because it's a fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect and we are not. So what is the natural thing that a human should do? It's not dwell on their mistakes, it's to fix their mistakes. Okay? So that was the second tool that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us in this cluster. The third one, and I actually love this surah, Surah Al-Ghashiyah, which we'll talk about inshallah. Al-Ghashiyah means the overwhelming event, and we'll talk about that meaning in more detail. But this surah came to talk about the concept of perseverance and patience. Now, you might say, well, hold on a second. Patience is something that non-Muslims know, right? How is this divinely, taught? This concept humans can get to on their own, to persevere and to be patient. So the definition of patience is what I think people struggle with, and normally people misunderstand what patience is. Patience is not somebody, when something happens, sits around and holds their anger. That's what people think patience is. Something difficult happened, a problem, a challenge, a catastrophe, and I sit there and I contain my emotions. And I hold myself without reacting negatively. Okay? That is a part of patience, but that's not patience. And this surah came to explain to us what patience is. To give you an analogy, someone who's climbing a mountain in a storm and the wind continues to try to blow that person off the mountain, but they continue to strive up the mountain to try to get to the top. Okay? That is a closer definition to what we're talking about, of patience and perseverance. So patience has an element of action. It's not just absorbing and controlling, but there's action, and you'll see it in the surah, inshallah ta'ala. Okay? Surah Al-Ghashiyah, different names for Surah Al-Ghashiyah. The common name is Al-Ghashiyah. It's also referred to as Hal Ataka Hadith Al-Ghashiyah, the first ayah of the surah. And some scholars also refer to it as Surah Hal Ataka. Surah Hal Ataka. When somebody says, oh, do you know this surah Hal Ataka? Yeah, I do. It's Surah Al-Ghashiyah. Okay. Can anybody guess if it's a Meccan or a Madani surah? Yes. Mecki, very good. And it was revealed around the 10th year of prophethood. And its revelation is extremely timely to the Prophet ﷺ. So unlike Surah Al-Tariq and Al-A'la, they were early Meccan. This is late Meccan. And the Prophet ﷺ had just gone through a very difficult ordeal, well, many of them. One of them was the boycott. The Muslims were boycotted. Does anyone know how long they were boycotted for? Does anybody know about the boycott? 3 years, right? So Quraysh and nobody else from the Arabs was allowed to deal with the believers, the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nobody's allowed to buy and sell from them. Nobody's allowed to marry from them or marry to them. Nobody's allowed to do any form of business with them or even supply them with anything. And it lasted for three years. And so in this time, 3 years, now I think the Prophet ﷺ, how long was his mission? How long was prophethood?
3 years.
23 years. 3 out of 23. That's a significant percentage. 3 out of 23, there was no da'wah. There's nobody coming into Islam because of this this boycott. It was so bad that the Sahaba started to starve, and they would eat the leaves off of trees and the shrubs, and it wasn't easy. And so the Prophet ﷺ just had come off of that boycott, and to make matters worse, ﷺ, his wife Khadija radiallahu anha, his best friend, his supports from the beginning, passed away. His uncle passed away. His external support, right? He had the internal at home and the external. He died too. He was left with 6 children now to care for on his own, single father. And 9 years or now 10 years of da'wah, and a few hundred, couple hundred believers, not very many. Okay, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had promised him that the message is going to go global, and it looked like it was going nowhere. And so you can feel how difficult this is for the Prophet ﷺ. Put yourself in his shoes, ﷺ. Not easy, not easy. So now he's going through all of this, and so you think, there's going to be so the revelations, of course, is different revelations at this time, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the surah Al-Ghashiyah. And as we said last week, the Prophet ﷺ used to recite the surah as a sunnah in different prayers. Does anybody know which prayer is this surah recited as a sunnah? Salat al-Jum'ah, which rak'ah? Second rak'ah. And which salah? Salat al-Eid, which rak'ah? Second. Salat al-Jum'ah and Eid, the same thing, because Jum'ah is technically Eid too, right? Yes, so that's how you can remember it, inshallah ta'ala. So we're going to talk about this surah. We're going to read it together, inshallah ta'ala, and then we'll talk about it. It's extremely beautiful in terms of its meaning. So let's start. This works. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية. And then remember, when you're reciting these ayats, because they're ending in a ta marbuta and you're stopping there, right? You don't say the ta, but you say aha. Okay, so make sure that's apparent when you're reciting. So tasla naran hamiyah, not hamiyah, hamiyah. Okay. ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking a question at the beginning. And the theme of the surah, unlike Surah Al-A'la, is in the end. Surah Al-A'la was the beginning. Sabbih isma rabbika al-a'la, right from the forefront of the surah. The end of the surah is where you find ayah 21 specifically is the key ayah of the surah, and these ayat lead to it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ الْغَاشِيَةِ. Has the news of al-ghashiyah come to you? And normally when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks a question in the past tense, the answer will be given. What is ghashiyah? Ghashiyah comes from ghashiyah, and ghashiyah means to completely cover something. Something is completely covered. So ghashiyah is, again, it's also a synonym of, or a word that's very similar to it, is musibah. Musibah comes from asaba. Asaba means what? Does anyone know?
Effect.
Sure, that's more of the general meaning, but it's actually to something that is struck with something, right? And in this case, struck with a difficulty, right? Because of the term ghashiyah, the difficulty is so hard that it covers. Basically, it covers you to the point where, has anybody been in a circumstance where they felt like the whole world is collapsing upon them? There's darkness everywhere. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. This is what ghashiyah is. Literally covering so that you have basically, it seems like there's no light whatsoever. It's just a big problem that you don't see a way out of, you don't see solutions. It is extremely difficult and taxing on you. This is what al-ghashiyah means. So sometimes in life we will go through a huge difficulty and we'll get so caught up and we will feel this way. And the Prophet ﷺ likely felt this way. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is coming now with the surah saying to him, has the news of the ghashiyah come to you? So look at the big picture, right? The Prophet ﷺ has been experiencing his own musibah, alayhi salatu wasalam, losing his support, his loved ones. Islam is not expanding by any means. They just went through 3 difficult years of hardship, of boycott, and so on and so forth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to the Prophet ﷺ, if you think this is difficult, no, I'll show you what's difficult. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة. On this day, الغاشية, which is referring to the day of judgment, of course. On that day, wujuh, faces, will be khashi'ah, will be in a state of humiliation. Khashi'ah not me. So if you're khashi'ah in the sense of khushu'ah, yes, that's a positive thing. But in the sense in the day of judgment, when it's referring to faces, it is intending or it's meant to say that the faces are being humiliated. Okay. وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة. They are working, amila, they are working nasiba as much as they can. They're putting so much effort on the day of in the day of judgment. These people are doing all they can. But guess what? Nobody cares on the day of judgment. It doesn't matter what you do on the day of judgment. You can put 110% of your effort trying to do good deeds on the day of judgment. Nothing counts. Nobody cares. And so this is the reminder to the Prophet ﷺ. If you think what you're going through is difficult, no. The real ghashiyah is on the day of judgment, when people will be working extremely hard and nobody cares. Nobody sees, nobody hears, nobody's interested. It doesn't count. Nothing counts. Amilatun nasiba. So all of its work is pointless. That's the real overwhelming event. Not what. So when you go through life, when I go through life, think about al-ghashiyah, that the day of judgment's coming, and there will be that day where there will be many people, that will now realize the reality of things, and they will try to do what they can to change that reality by doing good. But guess what? Doesn't make a difference. It doesn't. And what worse circumstance can you get than that? At least now you have control of what you can do over yourself. On the day of judgment, nothing. All gone to waste. Because it's too late. It's too late. وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية. تصلى means it's being driven it's being forced, taken somewhere forcefully. Where? Naran hamia, a fire that is scorching. Tasla naran hamia. Tusqa min aynin aniya. It will be given a drink from a spring of boiling water. Aynin aniya. Okay. So it's not very pleasant. ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع. They will not have any food except from ضريع. ضريع means anything that you could consume that will not get any benefit to the body whatsoever. Zero benefit, zero nutrients, absolutely none. So what they will consume is not going to benefit them either. So their actions are not going to benefit them. Their striving is not going to benefit them. And even their sustenance is not going to benefit them. لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it does not nourish them in any means whatsoever, and it will not satisfy their hunger, not even fill a stomach, not even. Because the rules, remember, in the Day of Judgment change. Here at least you can fill your stomach with whatever, as long as there's a mass that goes and occupies space in your stomach vessel, that will satisfy, at least that will fill you for a period of time. They've done nothing matters, nothing counts, and even the food doesn't count. It doesn't increase you in satisfaction whatsoever. And so this is the state of these people. And we have to be worried not to fall into that on the Day of Judgment, so we know about it now. But this is really now the lesson of perseverance, is that don't let difficulties, because none of us will have the difficulties of the Prophet ﷺ. Nobody. The Prophet ﷺ endured the most difficulties out of any human. And he had to do it for a long period of time. And it's not just physical, by the way. He was, obviously, there was physical abuse of the Prophet ﷺ, but there was also emotional, there's also social, intellectual, on every level. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ الْغَاشِيَةِ. Have you seen the real overwhelming event? The day when it's going to be a lot worse than what you're going through. And it's meant to give to support the Prophet ﷺ. So let's continue reading, inshallah ta'ala. وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة. So we just talked about people who are going to be doing extremely hard work on the Day of Judgment, all they can, and if they'd even taken 10% of that work and put it into dunya and achieved it in dunya, they probably would have been safe on the Day of Judgment. That's the first group. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now moves on to the next group. وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاعِمَةٌ. There is also on that day faces that will be na'ima. Na'ima means soft or tender. And faces are soft and tender is meant to show you and exhibit a form of luxury. People that are going to be enjoying luxury. What's the luxury? Well, it's going to get to it. لِسَعْيِهَا رَاضِيَةٌ. For its sa'i is satisfied. What's sa'i? Now, notice it didn't say لِعَمَلِهَا رَاضِيَةٌ. It didn't say for its deeds it is satisfied. For its sa'i. وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. So, al-insan, the human, is going to remember on the Day of Judgment what they strove for. Sa'a. Sa'a means what you dedicated your life towards. And we've talked about this concept back in the first term in another surah. But I'd like to emphasize it here because obviously it's used in the surah. But what's going to benefit people is what they've devoted their life to, not their actions, but obviously when you devote your life towards a purpose, a goal, your actions are going to follow suit. Even if you don't get to your goal, yes, even if you don't get to your goal. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you is an intention and a vision towards something, and you're striving for it. As long as you have that, and that is noble, and that is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is who it's talking about. These faces that are going to be soft and tender in luxury, our faces are people that لِسَعْيِهَا رَاضِيَةً, that they had sa'i in dunya. Okay? Something that they strove for. So, yes, I pray, I fast. But the question is, and you need to think about this, everybody needs to think about this. What is your goal in life? What is your ultimate mission? Is it to get a high-paying job? Just to graduate from here, work my way up the corporate ladder, and own a bunch of, become a CEO and own a lot of property and luxury items and materials and get married and have children? What's your goal? Is that your goal? Because that's your sa'i. And that's not the sa'i that you should. These are milestones in life that are meant to support you in your sa'i. But your sa'i needs to be, what is my ultimate goal and am I striving for it? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. Because if, my ultimate goal is to, let's say, change the systemic, the rules and the systemic issues that have, that are affecting social justice, for example, in this country, or Islamophobia, or whatever. If that's my goal, how much of your daily activities revolve on that goal, around that goal? Are they supporting that goal? Or are you just saying, that's my goal, but really all your activities are just all in silos and they're not really feeding into it? You have to ask yourself that question. You have to really reflect upon that. Because ultimately, that's what you will remember on the Day of Judgment. That's what will matter. وَأَلَّيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى. The only thing the insan will have is what they strove for. وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. And what you strove for will be shown on the Day of Judgment to everybody. Okay? So these faces are enjoying the result of their striving towards khair. Striving towards khair. And there's many examples of sa'i. There's an infinite ways to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. But you have to figure which one you want and you do it. And so all of your life activities are aimed to support that goal. Any questions on this concept, by the way? Yes. How are you pleasing Allah? You have to ask yourself how. Everyone wants to please Allah, right? How? So you will have responsibilities. Sorry, that's is it me? It's the blinking red, actually. Yeah. So to answer your question, and I'll try to raise my voice. So when we say sa'i, that's the only thing you're doing. You have a goal in life, but you still have responsibilities in life. And this is, you're not gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah, is this annoying people? This background? You guys okay with that? Okay, they're okay with that. Okay, inshallah. Hey, you need a screwdriver. Okay.
We can just turn it off.
No problem, no problem. Somebody messed with this room. So it doesn't absolve you of your other responsibilities. Serving, so you still have social responsibility, you have familiar responsibility. All of those are still on your plate. What we're saying is your goal, your accomplishments, what are they, for what purpose are they? Right? So think about in 20 years, in 30 years, if I was to succeed, as myself, to succeed in 30 years or 40 years, what would success look like? What is success to me? Ask yourself that question. And if success is owning a house and having a family, then that's your style. And those are important things, but these are not the ends. These are things that are meant to help you get married for that person, for your spouse, to help you on your journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. And so it becomes, now you're selecting a spouse. Now it becomes, how do I select a spouse to make it part of the equation, right? It's no longer, so now you're not looking at a spouse from a different lens, because now I have my goal. I need to pick somebody who, at least these are my principles. These are what's important to me, right? And they're going to help me to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, in these different ways for sure, but especially in the way that I'm striving for. Okay. We can talk about this for a long time too. So we'll keep it at that, inshallah. So we'll continue, inshallah. Fi jannatin aliyah. It will be in a Jannah that is very high. Now, it's interesting because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to relate to us. What is, sometimes you see these videos of these lofts, I don't know, New York City, 50th floor overlooking pole, right? It's to denote luxury. So, fi jannatin aliyah. You have the best view, the best views of Jannah. And I promise you, nothing's going to look nicer than Jannah. Okay. Name your most favorite city. It won't even be close. لا تسمع فيها لاغية. It will not hear any hurtful words in it, any lying, any backbiting, which is a source of a lot of today's problems between people. A lot of people, whether it's cheating somebody or backstabbing or rumors or namima, you will not hear any of that. لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية. In it will be springs that flow, a spring that flows. And we know in Jannah what the rivers are in Jannah. There is rivers of water, honey, milk, and, well, it's not intoxicating alcohol, but it's khamr. So not like what you see in this. It's not ethanol, okay? But at least even if it's ethanol, it's not the same form of ethanol. If there's a chemistry to it. فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة. And in it there are raised couches, مرفوعة, or elevated. وأكواب موضوعة, and cups that are basically placed for you. So you don't have to go fetch your own drink. The drinks are coming to you. You're being served. So if you imagine these ayat, this is complete luxury of people who strove in this life, not the people who strove in the day of judgment, because now it's too late. And that is the ghashiyah. That is the catastrophe. That is the ultimate misery, is when you strive on the day of judgment and it doesn't benefit. But these are the people who strove in this life. وَنَمَارِقُ مَصْفُوفَةٌ. Yeah. We need a screw. Bottom. Gone? Oh, the whole thing is gone. You pick it up? Oh, it turns. Inshallah, see? So for future, this actually turns.
What, may I see it again?
Yeah, you just pull it up and it turns. It's annoying. Stop. Okay. Is it better? Yeah, it's gone. Jazakallah khair. وَنَمَارِقُ مَصْفُوفَةٌ. Namariq are pillows, and they were going to be lined up pillows. Again, another symbol of luxury. and this to show you, like, subhanAllah, how much we're spoiled, because all of these things you might look and we'll wrap up the section actually. وَزَرَابِيُّ مَبْثُوثَةٌ means carpets that are spread out, very nice carpets that are spread out. So it's describing for you the state of the people who strove in dunya, and now they're enjoying themselves in Jannah. So raised to see beautiful scenery, they're being served in cups, they have carpets and couches that are elevated and pillows. And namariq it means pillows. And the Prophet ﷺ, when they were coming back from an expedition with the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ used to have a sunnah. Before they'd get into Medina, as they traveled back, they would camp outside of Medina for 1 or 2 days. And he would send somebody in, because they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have ways to communicate like we do. So he would send somebody into Medina to tell the families that were coming back, so that the families can prepare themselves. And this is the Prophet ﷺ's, etiquette and akhlaq, subhanAllah, is just something to learn from. So he, after months of being away, he wanted families to expect, their family member back, the Sahabi back. And so he was having a conversation with Jabir. And Jabir, by the way, at this time was taking care of 9 sisters, because his father was martyred. And so Jabir married an older woman to help him take care of his sisters. And so the Prophet ﷺ told him, basically, that he asked the Prophet ﷺ, why are we waiting? And then he said, so that they can prepare themselves. And he said to him, حتى تعد زوجتك لك النمارق, so that your wife can prepare for you the pillows. And he said to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, ma عندنا نمارق. We don't have any pillows at home. So the Prophet ﷺ said, إذن نأتيك بالنمارق. So we'll bring you pillows, don't worry. So the Prophet ﷺ used this word, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using it here, but just to give you how simple they were back then, that pillows were a form of luxury. And the fact that we have carpets and we have pillows and we have elevated couches and we have beautiful views now, this shows you that if we have all this now, then there's more expected of us. Really, our needs are, our basic needs as humans have all been taken care of, versus what the Sahaba had to go through. That we really don't have any excuse. The Prophet ﷺ, the best of creation, used to sleep on like a mat that was like woven. That he asked someone, he would sleep on his side, and then he would turn. It would leave marks on his blessed body. We are in ultimately comfortable beds with nice pillows, and we can probably sleep for hours. Has anybody tried sleeping just on their floor without any mattress? Yeah, it's good, by the way. Do that once in a while. You shouldn't get used to the luxuries of life, because one day they could disappear, and la samahullah, that could throw your iman sideways, and you start thinking, I can't do this, and you need to put yourself through difficulty once in a while, regularly, ideally. But the Prophet ﷺ used to have this on his side, and then and then Umar radiallahu anhu would say, Ya Rasulullah, ila mata hakadha, until when are you going to be like this? Like here's Qusayr in his palace, and Kisra with his kingdom, and here you are, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ told him, is this what's bothering you, Omar? Like these are dunya things, right? They're just that they don't matter, but they will matter in the hereafter, because it's ultimate luxury and bliss. Right, let's continue reading on, inshallah, so we can try to wrap up on time. أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts this section with 4 questions. Kaifa, 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 kaifa. What does kaifa mean? How? It means how. Allah's telling you That sound is back. Sorry. Don't. We're almost done. So bear with me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking for questions. أفلا ينظرون, have they not, do they not look at the ibil? كيف خلقت? The camel, how it's created. Also, ibil can mean groups of animals, how they were created. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about his creation. وإلى السماء كيف رفعت, and how the sky, do they not look at the sky and how it was raised? Again, how it was raised. And the mountains, how they were pegged to the ground. And the ard, the earth, and how it was spread out so it's flat so they can walk and move upon it with ease. Do they not look at the how? Do they not look at the how? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking these questions. So look and learn and seek to understand. And if you're and when you do that, think to yourself, do you have any hand in any of these four things? Did you support in any of this? Nope. Didn't create, didn't raise the sky, didn't peg the mountain, didn't make the earth smooth surface. Did it. Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So it's not, these are not your job. You're not your job. Your job is coming up in the next step. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding you, there are things you can't do and they're not your job to do. Such as these. You had no help, you had no support in providing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala any of these. But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say next? فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم. So these weren't your job. You had no help. You didn't do anything with the first four. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say next? فذكر. So remind. إنما أنت مذكر. You are only a reminder. You are only a reminder. So everything so far in Surah, all 20 ayat before this one, it's to build up to this point. To say, you have a job. Just do your job. Remember the context of the surah. The Prophet ﷺ was going through many difficulties, extreme difficulties. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to him, you want the ghashiyah? You think this is ghashiyah what you're going through? It's not. The real ghashiyah is on the day of judgment. When people are putting all their effort and it doesn't count. That is the true musibah. That is the true catastrophe. That is the event that's overwhelming and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. As for you, Prophet of Allah, and for us, your job. What was the Prophet's job? To remind. All he was, is reminder. And what says, you have no control over them. You have no control over them. So don't worry about outcome. As long as you do your job. So the lesson, you go through difficulty, you go through hardships. We talked about the theme of the surah. What was the theme? Perseverance. No matter what you're going through in life, continue to strive and do your job. Do not give yourself excuses. Do not pat yourself on the back and say, it's okay for me to take some time off and and go home and leave everybody and sulk in a corner. That's not patience. That's not perseverance. No matter how life difficulties come at you, do your job. That's how you'll get out of difficulty. Not let things, a lot of people, they'll encounter an issue. For example, they're volunteers at the masjid. There's an issue with another group of people, another person. It's too difficult. I can't work with them. Sleep. And they don't, no. It's not how it works. That's not how it works. No matter what the difficulty is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, you do your job. You have no control over them. They'll do things to you. You have no control. Your job is not them. Your job is you. As long as you're doing that, that's all that matters. لست عليهم بمسيطر. So the darker it gets, the more you do. That's how we should be. Not the less we do. Not you know, what they now, you need to take time. Certainly take time for yourself because that's important to rejuvenate yourself. But that has to be balanced. That doesn't stop you from saying, you know what, I stopped this work, it's too difficult. And I justify it if it's too hard. No, you want to be there, take a breather. Do something that relaxes you, but that doesn't take you away from the work. No matter how difficult life is. فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر. The job is not to control them. It isn't. إلا من تولى وكفر. Except as for those who turn away and disbelieve. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يعذبهم الله العذاب. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish them the significant or greatest of punishment. Yes. Zoom people won't get it though.
They won't be able to hear.
They won't be able to hear. So, and we're recording this. Sorry, I know we only have about 5 minutes. I did turn it off. Yeah, we would just look into our own mic. I don't know if that. Bring someone. Okay. So, you have no control over them. The Prophet felt was dark, and when the Prophet feels that it's dark, trust me, it's dark. Dark. And so many people go through difficulties, but you have to ask yourself this question. When you go through a difficulty, remind yourself, not ask yourself, remind yourself, there's at least 0.5 billion people on this earth that would take my spot every day, even with this difficulty. At least half, if not more, and I guarantee the world population would trade spots with you even with your difficulty. So think about that when you hit something really difficult. Last time, Allah, you experience a loss from a loved one, or a medical condition, or something to do with education or finances, whatever it is. Know that at least half of the world, 3.5 billion people, would switch with you every day. And speak to yourself, the Prophet ﷺ went through more. What I'm going through doesn't compare. This is why people when they look at the Prophet ﷺ, say, oh, he's a prophet. He's a prophet. I'm not a prophet. He was the prophet of Allah. Of course he can go through it. I can't. That's not what we learned in Surah Al-Al, right? We learned in Surah Al-Al. Perfection belongs to Allah. So don't ever give that excuse. That's not a valid one. And always think to yourself, Prophet ﷺ went through darkness, and another surah. So you're going through, keep going. It's difficult, but think about the big picture. Big picture is, and it really counts in the day of judgment. When the records are put, and people are trying to work to fix those records, they won't do anything. That's the difficult. I'm going to wrap this because this is getting really annoying now. As for those who turn away and disbelieve, Allah will take care of their punishment. It's not up to you. Punishment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of. And job is فذكر. Personally, for us, is that, of course, فذكر is a job of ours. You cannot be in Canada, in London, Ontario, and not have as part of your life objective power. You are put here in 2025 in London, Ontario for a reason. It's not by chance. It's a minority country that suffers from a lot of societal problems and illnesses because it's missing the solution that you and I have. We only have it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with it. It's that. So to say, I'm going to mind my own business, I agree, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to stay away from, your job is dawah. Just like the Prophet said. That comes with you as a khalifa on earth. That is you were born into that job. Everybody was. Everybody who gets given the trust of Islam has the responsibilities. No matter how difficult it gets, job is still, that was one of them. But certainly your other goal, you sky towards, you do. And it's not your business what people do at the end of the day. You're not going to control them. You're not. All you can do is your mind. So don't get upset when somebody doesn't do something your way. Trust me, when you become parents, it becomes real difficult. Okay? Want your children to do certain things, but as long as they're not displeased, let them have their way. Let them explore and do things as long as they're not displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or you can see them that they're falling apart in the slippers. Inna ilayna iyabahum, to us is the return. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the Prophet, everybody's return. It's going to be us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thumma inna alayna hisabahum. And we are responsible for their accountability, taking them into account. And so the lessons kind of wrap up everything, inshallah. Don't let your situation, difficulties around you, be the reason or excuse for you not to do your best to fulfill the goals. Do not let that be an excuse. There is a ghashiyah coming that is far more difficult than what you're going through. I promise you that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises. It's what we're going through doesn't count even near what the Prophet ﷺ went through, and yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him there's a bigger ghashiyah coming. What you're going through, there's a bigger coming. That is the day of judgment. People are trying to fix themselves, and it's too late. And so think about your goals. Think about if you're striving towards them. And have a plan that if and when difficulties come, and they will come, guaranteed they will come. If betting was halal, I would bet my whole house on everybody here getting a difficulty. This is part of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that. People think that they're going to just sit there and say, I believe, and they're not going to be tested. You're going to be tested, guaranteed. So prepare yourself. Have a plan. If things start to come off, the wheels come off the rails, you have a way to get back. And part of that is to strengthen your iman, to strengthen your knowledge, and to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Quran is supposed to help you with that. Surah is a beautiful surah in your toolbox when life strikes with difficulty. Any question before we close? I can turn this off now. Any questions? Yes.
Say dawah, need dawah to Muslims or non-Muslims. I feel like there's a big Muslim population that is not connected to their religion.
Dawah starts with you, training yourself, and your family, and your community, and society as a whole. It starts basically kind of like the ripple effect. You can't go influencing society without you equipping yourself with tools and knowledge and understanding and a way to convey that knowledge and that dawah. But it's also not to say, I'm going to work on myself, and when I become a master, then I'm going to start working on other people. No, that's not how it works. It's all in parallel. The Prophet said, teach upon me, even if it's just one ayah that you know. So as soon as you know something, be in the habit to share with other people and present it in a way to bring people closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your family, start with your family and your nearest community members, and certainly at the larger scale of society. Any other questions? Okay, any questions about the course before we close? Because it's 6:52. I think with all the microphone problems, we did this fairly quickly, alhamdulillah. Right, Jazakumullah khair. So next week, for those who missed the announcement at the beginning, we will actually, inshallah ta'ala, we'll start at 5:30. We're not going to wait for Maghrib. Otherwise, we're going to start class after 6. So what we'll do is we'll cover about 15 minutes, probably the intro of the surah, Surah Al-Fajr. You don't want to miss Surah Al-Fajr. The